Welcome to Conversations with STEM, the channel that helps you talk about science, technology, engineering, and math. I'm Molly. Let's get started. Unless we're going to start right at the very beginning where we're having students ask questions and wonder about what's going on, we need to give a little bit of background information. So this just gives a little bit of information about what indicators are. There are tons of different kinds of indicators. If you've ever used pool chemicals to test and see the pH of your pool, or if you have enough chlorine, you're using indicators. So there's all kinds of indicators, and this just happens to be one that's very easy to use and very easy to obtain. If you wanted to do this at home and actually try out the experiment, which you totally should because it's tons of fun, all you have to do is get red cabbage from the grocery store, take a piece, throw it in a blender, add some water, blend it up, sieve out the bits, and you have a red cabbage indicator. So after we grind it up and turn it into a solution, you can see that we have this really pretty pinkish purplish liquid. And the reason, by the way, that red cabbage will change colors is because that red pigment is a molecule called anthocyanin, so that's the actual indicator in red cabbage. But anyway, when you expose that solution or that molecule to an acid, it's going to change colors from purple to pink to red, depending on how strong or weak your acid is. And then if you expose it to a base, that pigment is going to change colors to blue if it's a weak base, green if it's a medium base, or yellow if it's a really, really strong base. So it's a really cool indicator because it does both acids and bases and also shows us how strong these chemicals are. Now, a lot of that is background information for you as the adults, so that you know where we're going in this video. I wouldn't necessarily give all of that information to your child up front. So unless they're specifically asking what's in the red cabbage that's going to make it change colors, or why is it going to be pink sometimes and red other times, these are questions that more likely are going to start coming up as they watch the video or as you choose to do the experiment. So you don't necessarily have to preload your child with tons of information in the beginning. You can kind of back it off and be a little bare bones and let them come up with these questions, and then you can kind of give that information, but the child is guiding the conversation and getting the information that means the most to them at the time that they need it. So now we can start going into the actual setup of the experiment. I always love to ask questions at the beginning because it provides the child an opportunity to pull out some of that background information. So we're not just kind of going in saying, oh, what do you think? When, we might be having an off day, we might not know anything about the topic. So can you name an acid or a base? If we can't, then we can kind of tease that out a little bit more. What I'd recommend doing is kind of naming some characteristics of acids or bases. So one of the big characteristics of an acid is that they're sour, right? So you can ask your child, if acids are sour, can you think of anything that's sour? A lot of acids tend to sting when you get them in a cut. And you can guide your child to the idea of lemons. Yeah, lemons are really sour. Or what about vinegar? If you've ever eaten salt and vinegar chips, man, they can really sting if you have a cut on your lip. So these are acids. Oh yeah, we know about these. What about bases? A big characteristic of bases is that they tend to be really slippery. Now, if you've ever done chores, have you ever been around something slippery? How about soap? Soap is a base. So we can start teasing out some of that, what's called prior activated knowledge or background knowledge, so that we have something moving into this experiment so we don't feel like we're just jumping in without knowing anything. The last thing we want to do before we get into the actual meat of the experiment is let's make some predictions. So take a look at these different chemicals on the screen and ask your child, do you think they're acids or bases? We already have some knowledge now because we talked about the characteristics of acids versus bases, and most of these are fairly common. If your child isn't familiar with some of them, you can encourage them to either make a guess or put them off to the side. Do you think they're an acid? Do you think they're a base? They could be neither. So what do you think based on the characteristics that we have already discussed about what acids and bases are? And this is a prediction, so don't feel like your child has to be right now. And don't feel like you have to be right now. I'd encourage you to write down, what are your predictions? Do you think these things are acids or bases? Why do you think that? And this is going to be me getting on my soapbox just for a quick second, because so many people think that science is either right or wrong. And if you're not right now, then you're wrong. And that's not what science is. Yes, science often has definitively correct answers. However, it doesn't mean that you need to have that correct answer right off the bat. Science is really this idea of looking at the world around us, gathering information, looking at our evidence, and then saying, did what we think we knew still hold true now that we have more information? And you see that over and over throughout history, is the things that we thought we knew are no longer the case. And that doesn't mean people were wrong. I mean, they were wrong, but they did the best they could with the information that we have. And I think that it's such a great idea. It's starting to really build up steam in the next generation science standards, this idea of constructing explanations. Not just give the right answer, get it right, put it on the test, move on, but build that understanding. Okay, this is what we think. Let's look at an experiment. Do we still think that? Let's read this. Do we still think that? Are we still correct? Does our understanding hold true? So all of that to say, make some predictions about whether these things are acids or bases, have your child make predictions, and then as you go through the video and you watch the experiment with your child, if they're wrong, that's okay, because so many children can get upset that their prediction was incorrect, that they were wrong. And celebrate it with them, because yes, they were incorrect in the first place, but now they've learned something. They know more now, and that's caused them to have a better understanding of this experiment, a better understanding of the world around them. All right, so now let's actually get into the video. So we've done so much setup. Now we can actually watch this and have some discussion. So I'm gonna only talk through this first one, and then I'd encourage you to just watch through the rest, do your predictions, get some information, see if your prediction was correct. So with this first one, you want to acknowledge, all right, this is baking soda. Did we think baking soda was an acid or a base? Whatever that prediction is, that's fine. We're not pressing for one answer over the other. Now, let's say the baking soda we think is an acid. If the baking soda is an acid, what's going to happen when we put it into the red cabbage? Well, we know that red cabbage turns pink or red in the presence of an acid. So, if our prediction is correct, then when we pour the baking soda into the red cabbage, then the red cabbage solution is going to turn pink. Awesome. So, is it true? Well, in that case, no. The baking soda made it turn blue. Are we wrong? Yes, but that's okay, because now we have more evidence. We can change it. I used to think, my prediction was, that baking soda was an acid. Now that I have more information, now that I have evidence, I see that I need to revise my claim. I need to change my prediction. So now, based on my evidence, I know that baking soda must be a base. And you can just go through that process in each one. Watch the video. What was our prediction? What's going to happen if our prediction is true? What actually did happen? And you can resort. You can have a whiteboard or a piece of paper, and you can kind of write these things down. And it's so great because you can see how the thinking changed over time. what information did this experiment tell us? Do we now know more about which substances are acids and bases after watching it? And I hope that the answer is yes, because the red cabbage shows us which substances are acids and which ones are bases based on the color that they changed. So what could we do now? And this question is really open-ended because I'd really intended for it to be a question that your child answers. And the fun part, and sometimes the scary part, is you never exactly know what they're going to say. But that's really the fun of it, because you could go so many different places. Now, I will say 95% of children, when I ask, what do you think we should do next? Or what would you like to do next to get more information about this? They always want to mix the chemicals. And I'm totally cool with that. Because especially we did baking soda, we did vinegar. Many children know that when you mix baking soda and vinegar, you get a reaction. So if we have the red cabbage, is that still gonna happen? What's the red cabbage gonna do? Is it gonna change colors? Is it not? Like, who knows? So you can have tons of fun. My one caveat, I'm gonna put it up on the screen so it's nice and big and bold. Only mix things that you as the adult know what will happen. And especially if you're gonna go down your own path with this, make sure that you are using things that are relatively safe. For example, in this video I used bleach. If you chose to do any other cleaners, make sure that you're never mixing bleach with any kind of ammonia. Make sure that you're not mixing things together that are going to give you any kind of, aerosol or gas, that you know what's going to happen. So make sure that you're not using things that aren't really safe to use with children. I'd always recommend doing this in a well-ventilated area because, just in case, and at the very least, it's gonna smell like cabbage. So having a well-ventilated area is a great thing, but just make sure that you're being safe with it. But there's just a lot of different directions that you can go. You can use this to look at the strength of different acids and different bases. If you have a strong base and you mix a weak acid, what's going to happen? It's not going to necessarily completely neutralize. Your red cabbage may still be blue. It may not all go back to purple. So there's a ton of different things that you can do. And that question is open-ended because you can really let your child think about it. And remember that you don't have to have the answers. You can go down that path with your child. And if you really don't know what's going to happen, take that opportunity and say, I don't know. So why don't we look it up online? Let's research. Let's make sure it's a safe experiment. And then you're really instilling that idea of safe science, research, collaboration. And it's just a really great thing to model. That's all I have for today. I hope this was helpful. If it was, or if you have questions, please leave comments in the comment section below. I'd love to hear from you, and I'll see you next time for another conversation with STEM.